he signed up to work with us, we figured out really quickly that she was dating a narcissist. Now, how did we know this? Well, I mean, this guy was very controlling, right? He was very charismatic. He really tried to control every aspect of her life. And, she began to question her own confidence, her own abilities, her own understanding of herself through this relationship. And this is when she was really smart and successful.
Well, what I thought was so interesting about this particular client is she was dating this guy and she hired us because she couldn't seem to find her way out of the relationship.
Yeah.
It was almost like back in the day, because this was some time ago.
Uh-huh.
It's like, I thought it was very interesting that doing what we do, we ended up doing a lot of like breakup coaching, right? Well, it was like breakup coaching.
Sometimes it's what you have to do to help somebody get love, right?
No, I know. And so she really wanted out of the relationship, but she didn't know how to get out of the relationship. And it took us a while. It took us a few sessions for us to figure out that she didn't feel safe in the relationship.
Yeah.
And that she sort of had a fear about what he might do when she ends the relationship.
Well, and it was a well-founded fear because there was one event where after she had broken up with him and she was at a bar and he showed up at that bar. It's like he had been following her around and came and confronted her at her table.
No, he threw a drink in her face.
Oh, that's right. He threw a drink in her face. I forgot about that part.
Yeah, no, he threw a drink in her face.
So her instincts were right. That she wasn't safe.
And so, I think a lot of times in the beginning, right, when you start dating somebody whose sole focus is on you, it can be super intoxicating.
Oh, exactly. I mean, that's what it's like with somebody like this.
So there's this whole idea that when you start dating one of these like toxic people, that it starts off feeling very special. Because when a narcissist shines their spotlight of attention on you, you feel like you're the only one in the world.
There's a phrase people use, it's called love bombing, right? And it's literally feels like you're being bombed with love. It's just so overwhelming. It's so intense. It's so focused on you that it really feels special, right? It really feels like, wow, this is really special. This person really seems to be like really crazy about me.
Yeah, and the way they start off, it's wow, it's super intoxicating, and their sole focus feels like it's on you, and very quickly you realize that they're controlling. They're very controlling.
Yeah.
So they start to isolate you from people who are close to you.
Yep.
And this particular client had been alienated from her family. She'd been alienated from a lot of friends. And she was a very social person. And it sort of threw her for a loop. But when we kind of diagnosed the problem, suddenly she realized that even her ex-husband had a similar traits.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when she realized that she was stuck in a pattern of selecting men who were narcissists, wow, that's when the bells and whistles went off, right? The big alarm bells, where she's like, oh, wait, I'm stuck in a pattern of attracting narcissists.
Exactly. So after a few weeks of us working with her, and she had broken things off and she had starting to set up all these barriers in place to keep him out of her life, because he kept trying to sneak in every little nook and cranny he could find to try to get back to her, right? And once she'd set up all the roadblocks and she was like, oh, okay, I feel like I'm safe.
Yeah.
She had gone shopping. She'd gone to Whole Foods.
Yeah, she was at the supermarket. And I mean, this was a process where we set her up before the actual breakup to set up these roadblocks and these barriers and what to do and how to handle the breakup. So we walked her through this sort of like mock breakup, like we had practice sessions, right? And then she very quickly cut it off, ended it, cut it off, and set up these roadblocks. And there she was. And I remember her coming to the session.
Yeah.
And she says, well, I'm shopping at Whole Foods, pushing my cart along past the oranges in the produce section, and she saw him. But he was facing the other direction, thank goodness. So he didn't see her. And she said she picked up her handbag and walked out of the store. She was almost done with her shopping, and she followed exactly what we told her to do. That if you happen to cross paths, just exit. Find the nearest exit. And the thing is about the Whole Foods story, when she told us she got to her car, and for a second she just like caught her reflection in the car, and she felt like she was standing a little taller. Like suddenly her self-esteem started to flood back into her system because she knew that she could take care of herself again. Because when you're in a relationship with somebody who's a toxic person, you start to question your sanity. You start to question your ability to make decisions for yourself. And your whole life seems to revolve around this person. And even though it starts off with a narcissist that their focus is on you, and it seems like all they want to do is please you, it very quickly switches where they're looking for you to please them.
Yeah.
And the thing about being in a relationship with a narcissist is you can't please them.
You can't.
They're not pleasable.
No.
Right? It's like an endless pit of despair. You can never fill that black hole inside another person.
I mean, there's so much lack of sense of self behind that cover that they put up, that they're so charming and they're so on top of it, right? And they're so important how they present themselves, right? But really underneath that is this really fragile self-esteem. And so they're really trying to control you in order for them to keep this facade that they've created for themselves in place.
Well, it feeds their ego.
Yeah.
When they're able to control you, when they're able to alienate you from the people that are close to you, it's their way of closing exits off so that you can't get on the off ramp and get out of the relationship.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it is paying attention in the early stages of a relationship. So if there's a lot of reasons. We're going to cover the reasons why anybody, could be male or female.
Yeah.
Particularly we said why women are attracted to narcissists, but can be why men are attracted to narcissists. And we're going to cover those reasons why. But the first thing that's so important is to understand what a narcissist is. And this is helpful no matter your pattern, because breaking the pattern, no matter what it is the same in a sense. It's the same ideas, right? It's the same concepts. Because the first step to breaking a pattern is identifying it, right? It's identifying the pattern first.
Yeah. So if you find yourself in a relationship with somebody where at the beginning they love bombed you, right? And they came on strong, and even if you rejected them, that they came on even stronger, and they did everything in their power to win you over. But then you noticed after they had won your heart and you had said, okay, great, I'm in. Yeah, I'm in, right? That suddenly things started changing, and maybe it started changing subtly at first, but suddenly you've got a person who's very critical, right? A person who's very hard to please, a person who picks away at your self-esteem and your self-confidence, where you begin questioning, are you the one who's the problem in the relationship, right? And somebody who's very, like Orna said, very controlling of you, somebody's going to isolate you from your family and your friends. If you start noticing these characteristics, these qualities, then you're probably in a toxic situation with somebody who's really not good for you.
They end up becoming critical of yourself, of you. Of you become critical of yourself because they become critical of you. So I misspoke a little bit, but the idea is that if you're being loved bomb in the beginning, and that rather quickly, right, in the first several months, let's say, right, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months, somewhere in there, if the focus starts changing and they start being hypercritical of you, and you start feeling like you're not able to please this person. So it starts off like, oh, you can do no wrong. And then suddenly it very quickly switches to, oh my gosh, you can't do anything right. You can't do anything good enough.
We had another client she's a very successful businesswoman. And her business required a lot of travel, and it really required her to be in the spotlight. And yet she found herself in a pattern of being in a relationship with narcissists. And both her ex-husband and her ex-fiance, because she got out before she married the second one, both of them were really critical of her career, really critical of her success in her business. And both of them really felt threatened by it and pressured her to give up her business in order to stay with them, right? And this is another big sign. It's like there's a lot of pressure of any kind of your stepping into the limelight, any kind of your success gets diminished because it in some way outshines them.
Right. And with this particular client, this other client that you're talking about, it was sort of an interesting thing because she was a successful businesswoman and she really enjoyed her work. And both of these men kept saying, well, you don't need to work so hard. You could stop working. I'll take care of you. I'll take care of you. And it was like her, she very much loved her career, right? She loved the work that she did. And so it was really odd that I remember one of her questions early on in working with us is it true that every man's going to want me to give up my business, so he could, take care of me? And we were like, oh, that's a limiting belief, right? Yeah. And because that's not true. As a matter of fact, she's married now. She's been married for a few years to a wonderful guy, wonderful man who really supports her business and goes out of his way to be supportive of her and her career, and is perfectly fine with her, doing the thing that she enjoys and loves so much. So be careful if somebody's trying to change you and mold you, and most of all, segregate you from those other people that are close to you. Yeah. And this can be signs of other sort of toxic relationships. Abusers like to alienate you from other people in your life. So it's very similar. And what we want to say is there is a very small percentage of the population that are these toxic people, right? Yeah. These narcissists, these abusers. And yet, if you're the kind of person who is stuck in a cycle of being attracted to these kinds of people, it can feel very frustrating through the dating process because it seems like that's all there is out there to date.
That's all you find.
Yeah.
You like have the narcissist magnet, right? That goes out and brings them all to you.
Beep, beep, beep. And so you're like, wait, I keep hearing that this is just a small percentage of the population, but like this guy and this guy and this guy, right? And this is like the second client that we were talking about. Uh-huh. This is very much her situation. She's like, oh, I don't even know why I should bother. It seems like every guy I go out with is a narcissist.
Yeah.
And so what we want you to understand is that's true for whatever your filter is. If your heartbreak has been because you ended up with cheaters, for example, right? Let's say you had people cheat on you when your partner cheated on you, which is such a horrible betrayal. And then you start feeling like, oh gosh, every guy cheats. Mm-hmm. Every guy must cheat. And so those are limiting beliefs that come out of your experiences. So we think that what happens is that we have experiences and they tell us, oh, must be the way the world is.
Right.
But what we know to be true, it's the reverse that happens.
Yeah, we like to say it this way. The world appears to us as we believe it to be. Right. So think about that. The world appears to you as you believe it to be. Like Orna said, we tend to do it backwards. We tend to look back and see the evidence and say, well, because of these events, I feel or believe or experience this truth. But it actually works backwards. You have the truth, the belief, the feeling first, which then filters those experiences, which brings more evidence, which creates sort of this reinforcing loop over and over and over again. So let's talk about what are the conditions, right, that you would have that would make you attracted to these kinds of people.
Yeah.
So what is it about you that says, wow, I'm like a narcissist magnet?
So one of the top conditions that have to be true for you is you may have an overdeveloped sense of empathy, right? You may have an overdeveloped sense of empathy. Like the second client we were talking about, uh-huh. The one that's married now, this great guy. And she kind of had this overdeveloped sense of empathy that came about in her childhood because her father was sick throughout her childhood and was always in the hospital and about to die.
Mm-hmm. But he never would.
He didn't die till she was in her 20s.
Exactly.
And so, but ever since she was a little girl, he had all these heart problems. And so her dad was always on the edge of maybe dying. And so she had this sort of overdeveloped sense of empathy, having gone through this, oh my gosh, dad's going to die. Oh my gosh, my dad's going to die. And so since that was such a part of her, the way she showed up, in her family, the way she compensated for this ongoing fear as a little girl was to be incredibly in tune with another person and have this overdeveloped sense of empathy.
Empathy's great. I mean, we all need a certain amount of empathy in order to coexist with other human beings. And it makes life easier as well because you're able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and say, wow, I get their pain. And you can set aside your judgment, right? But when that overdeveloped sense of empathy causes you to lose yourself, lose your own sense of self because you're constantly being drawn into the emotional life, the emotional state of other people. And you have trouble sort of finding that boundary between you and the other person. right? That is like candy to a narcissist because your focus is on their emotional state and you're always understanding and empathetic of their emotional state, which once shines the light on them, right? But they never reciprocate. They don't then turn around and aren't empathetic about you and your emotional state. In fact, they probably tend to diminish that.
Yeah.
So you want to look at, did you have some kind of pattern in your childhood that caused you to really tune into the emotions of the people around you? Sometimes if there's alcoholism or emotional abuse, right, you'll want to be in tune with that person emotionally because you want to know, is it safe or not? And so you're constantly checking in energetically with those people who are raising you because you need to know that the environment is safe. And so you're trying to read into it.
And Caitlin says, she says here in the comments, she says, I've been attracted to narcissists my whole life, both in partners and friends. My father was a narcissist. So before we give you the second thing, she touches on it right there.
Yeah.
I'm going to just stop for a second and introduce us.
Oh, yes, let's do it.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. There we go. I can talk today. My name is Orna Walters.
And I'm Matthew Walters, and this is Love Intervention. We are here to intervene in your love life to get you on the path to long-lasting, soul-satisfying love.
So Caitlin touches on it. She says, my father was a narcissist. Thank you, Caitlin, for bringing up basically what we have as reason number 2, right? One of the reasons why you could be stuck in this pattern is because you have a parent that was a narcissist, right? So if you were raised by a narcissistic parent, it's very likely that you will then, from those experiences as a child, then have that narcissist magnet in a sense, where you start feeling like, oh my gosh,
because it feels familiar. We always say it this way: it's like there's this part of your subconscious that's really about keeping you on the same track, right? And what it does is it recognizes a familiar energetic match in somebody else, and it sends out the signal. It says, this is familiar, this is familiar, this is familiar. What it doesn't tell you is this familiar good or is it familiar bad? It just raises an alarm for you to pay attention to. Now, what happens is when that alarm goes off is a lot of us mistake it as excitement or attraction. And so that alarm goes off, says, this is familiar, this is familiar. You go, wow, I'm feeling really attracted to this person.
This must be my person.
This must be my person. And then suddenly you find out, oh, once again, here it is, another narcissist.
I'm stuck here in the same pattern.
Yeah.
So the third reason why you may have that narcissist magnet inside of you, and you're like, wait a second, if these are such a small percentage of the population, why do I keep finding them? So the third reason, actually, I've been giving them.
You're going to give me the third reason? The third reason is you have a learned strategy from your childhood of sacrificing for love. And what this means is that you had to, or felt you had to as a child, give up what you wanted or needed in service of somebody else in your family, whether it was, say, a depressive parent, right? Or a sibling who had a lot of special needs that everybody needed to pay attention to. Like a disabled sibling, right? In some way.
Or a disabled parent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So all of these situations where you're finding that you are constantly sacrificing what you want and need for the better of the family, right, once again, makes you the kind of person who is a good fit for a narcissist because they want somebody who naturally sacrifices themselves.
Yeah. And so what we want to say is love, like real healthy dynamic between two people in a romantic relationship of two adults, right? That kind of love does not equal sacrifice. Because a lot of times we're bought into the myth, right? A lot of people who sacrifice for love, and that's part of their pattern, that they are stuck in this pattern because they have the belief that that's what you do when it comes to love, that you have to sacrifice. And so what we want to say is it's important for you to know what you need because your needs are never negotiable. Your wants are negotiable all day long. So you have to know the difference between what you want and what you need. So that's the third sort of criteria, a lot of, the third bucket of people that tend to, sort of find these narcissists and end up finding another and another and another. And we want to say there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You can completely, take the narcissists out in the world that are now being highlighted by your subconscious mind and downgrade them to like extras in your own personal movie. So they're just like gray and in the background, you barely even notice them at all.
Or I would even say this, that you take that this is familiar signal and you see it as a fear response and say, run away.
Oh yeah.
Right. When you feel that, like, this is familiar, you go, oh, this is a narcissist.
Yeah.
I'm going to run away from this situation.
I'm out of here.
I am out of here. So let's go with number 4. One of the 4, the fourth reason why you might be attracted to narcissists. And that is that you just don't feel worthy. You don't feel worthy of love. You don't feel worthy of in your life.
Like low self-esteem.
You have low self-esteem. And so once again, that makes you a good target for somebody like this, because when they put that love bomb on you, it's like, oh, it really raises you up.
Yeah.
And then, when they start taking it all away and taking from you, it's like, well, you just don't deserve better. Becomes sort of the thought you have in your head.
Yeah. And so one of the things we want you to know is they're looking for an easy target, these kinds of toxic people, whether they're a male or a female, right? When we've definitely worked with men, we've coached men who are in relationships with narcissistic women and gotten them, free and clear of the relationship. So it seems to be like our wheelhouse that we can, really walk somebody through this breakup process so they don't fall back into the clutches of the narcissist over and over again, and they can make a clean break. So one of the things that you want to be aware of is, how does it feel, that feeling when you first find somebody attractive, right? And so when you, like Matthew was saying, that you can start to recognize the familiar signal and you recognize it for what it is, which is, nope, this is not my person, instead of thinking, ooh, this is my person.
Yeah.
No. So one of the things that we want you to know is this is changeable. Whatever pattern you're stuck in, if you're stuck being attracted to toxic people, then that's just a pattern that you learned for whatever reason in your family of origin. You can break that. You can break those patterns and those strategies that are no longer serving you. You just made a choice as that child in your family. And so as an adult, you can actually make a new choice. It does take some time, but it's possible for you to do it. So we really want you to know you're not stuck being attracted to narcissists for the rest of your life.
I want to share this last story. This was an experience that we had. We had a friend who was also a colleague and somebody we brought into our business.
Yeah.
And we began to realize that, it was not a healthy relationship, it was not a healthy situation. And finally, this person did certain things that was like, oh, this is unacceptable. And so we were like, we're done. We're done here. We're cutting things off. We're no longer talking to you, right? And we put up the barriers that we were talking about.
Made a clean break.
And the funniest thing was, this person's response to all of that was saying, the worst thing you can do to a person is not respond. Now that's a narcissist.
Only for a narcissist.
Only a narcissist would feel that way,
yeah.
right? I mean, I would feel frustrated and hurt if somebody shut me out, but they could do a lot worse things to me than shut me out.
There's a lot worse things you can do to another human being than simply ignore them. I mean, I think ignoring them in a way is taking the high road. There's a lot of worse things you can do to somebody than ignore them. But that's what you have to do. You have to, because those types of people feed on that connection with you and that ability to try to get their clutches in you. So I'm just going to do myself one more time, and then we'll take questions.
Yep.
This is an AMA, and ask me anything or ask us anything. So you can ask us about narcissists, but what we're here for tonight is our love intervention. So hello, I'm Orna Walters.
And I'm Matthew Walters. And like Orna said, this is Love Intervention, where we intervene in your love life, get you off the path of heartbreak and onto the path of long-lasting, soul-satisfying love.
That's right. So let's look at these questions here.
We actually have a few about narcissists, so why don't we go into those first?
If there's a question, people are just sharing information. We're going to be skipping over those because, if you have a comment, that's great. We'll read those later. But if you have a question for us, we want to be answering your questions. So, we covered this one. Do you want to?
Which one are we talking about?
The first one.
Gina, we talked how to get out of the relationship. Why don't we just walk through that, or do you want to?
I think it's a little too detailed, and it's different for each person a little bit.
All right, great.
So
let's go with
we
Angel.
already said you want to block them off and make a clean break. And so I think we've covered
Let's go with Angel's question. So Angel says, I have a lot of trauma from past assaults, and my typical stress response is to freeze and fawn. Narcissists love that people-pleasing aspect. Yeah, I've never had a healthy relationship. I want to get out of this pattern and feel more empowered. I'm learning to recognize my own needs. Excellent. So glad you guys are talking about the subject tonight, really trying to work on recognizing and acknowledging red flags. It's all a process.
Yeah.
I'm open to any thoughts and advice on this. I'm trying to get better at recognizing yellow flags too. The goal is to go slow and be safe. Well, the last thing you said is the first thing, most important thing we would say to you is slow things down.
Yeah, I want to say this to you, Angel. Every woman, especially if you live in a bustling metropolis, right? If you live in LA or New York or Chicago or a big city, you're taught at some point to, have a crossbody handbag when you're going out, or to hold your purse tight. You're not going to be walking down the street with your purse like dangling, off one finger or whatever, right? Because somebody who's a purse snatcher is not the most clever thief. They're looking for an easy target, right? They're looking for an easy target. And I'm using the purse snatcher as an analogy for somebody who's a narcissist, because they are also looking for an easy target. So the reason why you've already given yourself the answer by saying go slow, right, is whenever you're looking to break a pattern, it can be any pattern that you're stuck in, you always want to go slow so you get more data, so that you get more information, instead of letting the love bomb overtake your feeling state and you jump into exclusivity, you jump into a relationship. Yeah. So at the beginning of any dating process, when you start dating somebody, don't go all in. Don't go to exclusivity very quickly. Take things slowly in getting to know who they are. Take things slowly physically, even if it's hot, hot, hot between you, right? Going slow allows you to get more data. Because when you go slow with somebody who's toxic, like a narcissist, they're going to find an easier target. They're going to move on. They're not going to invest a ton of time and energy in getting you to open up at the very beginning, right? They're only doing that right up front. So don't be an easy target. Don't walk around with your, just giving your heart away. Don't give a stranger the benefit of the doubt. It's the biggest mistake people make through the dating process. And the weird thing is people tend to date backwards, right? They tend to give a stranger the benefit of the doubt up front. And then after you're married for a decade or more, they stop giving their spouse the benefit of the doubt, the person who's earned it. So what you want to do is make sure you're not giving a stranger the benefit of the doubt. I give this guy the benefit of the doubt all the time because he's earned it, right? We were together, 15 years this year. So, it's time for us. It's just know that you're not going to just give your heart away right away. Your heart is something precious. Somebody has to earn it.
Exactly. I would say as well, part of going slow, we always like to say you want to put some friction in the process. And what that means is you want to put little roadblocks and little hurdles in place along the way, so that a person who's really serious about you has to put in a little bit of effort in order to get to you. Right? It's not like you're playing hard to get. You're not faking something. You're just along the way, as you slow things down, you're saying things like, hey, I'd rather get a phone call as opposed to a text. Hey, I don't like this. Could you possibly do this instead?
Yeah.
Right? You're expressing yourself, you're asking for what you want and need, and you're paying attention to the response that you get.
Yeah. Because a narcissist will even argue with you with how you feel.
Yeah.
They'll say, "Oh, you don't feel like that," or they'll say, "Why do you feel like that?" I wouldn't feel like that, and they justify something else, right? They kind of make you think you're going a little nuts. So any relationship, if you feel like you're going a little nuts, you don't know which way is up or down, you're feeling all scrambled up inside, that is a good indication that relationship is not healthy for you.
You should feel good about yourself.
Hold on a second. I think here's the thing that we really want you to understand. You do not have to go get a degree in psychology or psychiatry. You don't have to play armchair psychologist and diagnose these people. All you have to pay attention is go slow and pay attention to how you feel. So when you're paying attention to you and the focus is on you in the dating process, instead of being so focused on, is this my person? Is this my person? Is this my person? Because if it's your person, you'll discover that over time. Yeah. But you're not going to know over the first few dates. You're just not. Everybody wants to rush through that stuff. And it's the biggest mistake. If your habitual pattern, because you've already recognized you've been attracted to narcissists and to other toxic people, then you have to put the brakes on. It's almost like dating with training wheels, right? You're going to go really slow. And so instead of, maybe you want to get off the bike, right? You want to You want to date with a walker, you know, go really slow and just really pay attention more about how you're feeling with that person and how do you feel when you part from that person. I mean, I remember going on a date with a guy. I was online dating, and I met this guy. He didn't work in my office, but he came into the office, and he was super hot and super like, oh, tall drink of water hot. And I remember going on this date with him, and I don't think there was anything wrong with him. I don't think he was a toxic person, but I had already started evaluating what's going on with me, right, when I spend time with this person, and how do I feel when we part. And so, you know, we'd gone on a date and he walked in my car and he was very polite. And I remember I felt so uncomfortable that in my own skin that I kind of had to suss it out. And so instead of driving home, I sort of went for, you know, because he'd walked in my car and wanted to just drive somewhere. So I dropped a few blocks away and I sort of pulled over and I kind of cleared my head. And I realized like my inner mean girl was just tearing me apart inside. Like I should have, and I didn't, and I could have, and I didn't, and I should have, and I could have, and I didn't, and I should have, and I could have. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is not how I want to feel. Like this is, the person I want to share my life with isn't the person that's sparking this inner critic to ream me and be like cruel. I mean, my inner dialogue was so cruel after that date. I didn't see that super hot guy again. And he could be perfectly fine, but what he inspired in me wasn't something that I wanted in my intimate relationship. And so instead of trying to play armchair psychologist, just pay attention to you. It's so much more, it's right. You don't have to worry about, ooh, red flag, ooh, yellow flag, ooh, flag. Forget about that stuff. All you need to do is slow the dating process down. Don't give the benefit of the doubt to a stranger. Don't go exclusive or have sex quickly, and take your time.
And pay attention to how you feel.
That's the key.
Because when I was, you know, first flirting with Orna and we were in that early process before we'd even had our first date, right? But we talked on the phone and stuff. I'd get off the phone and I just feel good. I'd have this warm feeling inside. I'd feel good about myself. And I just like the day got a little bit brighter. Now, it wasn't like a crazy, like, oh my God, I can't wait to talk to her again or anything like that. It was just really kind of nice and kind of sweet. And I think that's something like that. Your version of that is what you're looking for. It's like you just feel good when you're with the person and you feel good when you part. You feel good about yourself, right? It's not like you're thinking about them and, oh my God, this person's so great and they're so amazing and they're so whatever, right? Who cares? You're feeling about yourself. You're going, well, I feel good about me.
Yeah.
And I feel good about who I was with this person. And I feel good about who they are with me. And that makes me feel good about me.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, because I was the one who used that example, I'll just say when I was dating Matthew, so I can share that, I had, you know, I felt good about me and I felt good about getting to know him. But I wasn't like obsessively thinking of Matthew every minute of the day. But I was just like curious because I wanted to know more. I was like, oh, he's cool. I want to know more. Oh, I want to know more. And it was just sort of this really grounded, comfortable ease. We had an ease with each other. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't stressing about every little thing. Like, should I call? Is he going to call? Like, I didn't have any of that, this old stuff that I used to have. So paying attention to yourself is key.
Yeah.
Let's get to some of these questions. Okay. So Mateo says, hey guys, I hope you can give me some advice. I've been seeing this woman, I hope, for a couple months, and I don't really know what I'm doing wrong, but I feel like I'm not doing what she wants. I just want the ladies to pay attention to the way this question is phrased, because he says, I feel like I'm not doing what she wants. I think women can be so stingy and we hold our cards close to our chest and we don't let a guy know what it is we want. And guys want to please us. A guy who wants a relationship with you wants to know how to please you. So he says, she's always got advice about how I'm doing things and even gives me unsolicited advice about how to get ahead at my job. I think I'm pretty good at what I do and I find myself getting defensive. How should I handle this? Oh, Mateo is dating a guy and he doesn't even know it.
Yeah. He's dating a guy and he's dating a guy who likes to improve his partner, who gets their self-esteem from improving their partner. And it sounds like this woman you're dating also, and we don't normally like to diagnose the other person, but I think it's helpful, is also someone who is motivated by the stick and not the carrot, right? And because we tend to treat people the way we want to be treated. And, so
not necessarily the way they want to be treated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So she's nudging you along. I don't feel like, it doesn't sound like this is a good fit. I mean, we would need to know more. I certainly don't want to just dole out, like, hey, you should break up with that person. I don't know how long you've been dating. I don't know anything else about your situation with her. But I think when you say, how should I handle this? That's really easy. You show up authentically. And you say, I'm good at my job and I like the way I'm doing things. If you think I should be doing things differently, or, tell her you're not appreciating her unsolicited advice and that you're good, that you don't need that, that you have mentors or whatever. I mean, the reality is when people say, how should I handle it when it's a communication thing, there's only one way to handle communication, and that's to be authentic. And I think a lot of times people misunderstand what we mean when we say be authentic.
Yeah.
Because being authentic means you're identifying how you feel, and then you're sharing that feeling with the other person. And that's it. So being authentic doesn't mean you're comfortable, right? Like we have a client currently who isn't very good at flirting. Like she comes off very sort of cold and closed off. And we've been telling her she needs to let a guy know that the water's warm and give him signals, so that he asks her out again if she's had a good time. And she says, well, that doesn't feel authentic. And we were like, what? Because being authentic has nothing to do with your comfort zone, right? I mean, I could see how she can misunderstand. So being authentic, I'm going to say it again, means one thing and one thing only. That means you're identifying how you feel and you're sharing it with the other person. So for example, Mateo could say something like, I feel frustrated when somebody offers advice about how to get ahead at my job when I'm pretty good at my job and I like where I am at my job. And I feel frustrated about receiving unsolicited advice. Yeah. If I want your advice, I'll ask, could you please refrain from giving me advice about how to do things differently at my work? I feel pretty good about it.
And so Orna's done a really great job of showing you a template for how to be authentic and then how to make a request. Now, the next piece is really key about being able to evaluate the other person, because you want to see how this other person responds, right? If she hears that and says, oh, wow, I hear you.
I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. I certainly didn't mean to give that impression. I'll lay off the advice about your job, right? I get how you feel, and I wouldn't like that myself, right? That's one way to respond. And that would be that'd be a good response. That'd be a positive response, right? Another way to respond would be like, well, wait a minute. I think you can do better. I don't know why you're not listening to me, right? Now that's a totally different response. And that's a response that tells you about this other person, who they are and what they're capable of.
Yeah.
And that's what we say when we say go slow and evaluate, right? Is see how the other person responds. See if they're able to step up and meet you where you are, or if they argue with you or contradict you or diminish, try to diminish what you're saying and saying it's not important.
Before you invest your heart, right? Before you invest emotionally, before you go exclusive, before you have sex, before you do any kind of investing or giving of yourself to another person, you want to evaluate their capacity, right? Who are they and what are they capable of? Are they capable of hearing you when you say, oh, I feel frustrated or I'm hurt or I feel sad about something they did, right? A lot of times people are great when you're a third party, right? Like if I went to Matthew and I said, oh, this friend of mine, Cindy, really upset me, blah, blah, blah. He'd be great at that. But, it takes some communication skill to be able to say, I feel sad that you said that, or I feel hurt when, I feel hurt when this happens, or whatever. It's evaluating how they are not when everything's going great. It's evaluating their capacity when there's a bump to smooth over, right? When there is some kind of misunderstanding or disagreement or something to bring up. Most people are conflict avoidant. And when we don't have these uncomfortable conversations, we're leaving ourselves open to toxic people, to people taking advantage of us, to people manipulating us, to people to playing nice, to, honestly, a lot of women get into trouble because they play nice, right? We've told all of our clients, A lot of guys on a first date will go to the first date and a little short coffee meet, cocktail, whatever, and then they'll want to take you to a second location. There is no reason you should ever go to a second location with a stranger on a first date.
Right.
Period. If you met them off an app, you don't know who they are. There is no reason I don't care how strong the attraction is. There'll be plenty of time for you to have plenty of sex if that's your person, right? So, or whatever. So never, never, never let a stranger take you from the first place that you're meeting to a second location. You just shouldn't. That should just be a hard and fast rule so you keep yourself safe. Because I think a lot of times people play nice, particularly women play nice, and they want to be accommodating. And I think a lot of times women are too accommodating. So we want you to stay safe out there in your dating life.
You know, I want to go back just a second.
I want to introduce ourselves again.
Oh, do that, and then we'll do that. That sounds great.
Okay, why don't you start this time?
Well, I am Matthew Walters.
And hello, I'm Orna Walters.
And this is Love Intervention. That feels weird to do it in that order. This is Love Intervention. We are here to intervene in your love life so you get off the path to heartbreak and on the path to long-lasting, soul-satisfying love.
Yeah, we're here to intervene, but in a good way, to make things better, to break those patterns that have been keeping you from the love that you want. We introduced this sort of touchy topic about being attracted to toxic people. And
so there's something I want to say that's important to all of this, because one of the things we've talked about with people who are attracted to toxic people or find themselves in those kinds of situations is they have this overdeveloped sense of empathy. And there's something that you said to a friend of yours that I think is really important to share. And Orna was talking to this friend who really studied a lot of empathic communication. Right. And Orna said, well, kind of the big mistake you're making is you're judging the success of your communication based on the response of the other person. And instead, and this is where you got to pay attention here, instead, you want to base the success of your communication based on whether or not you are able to be authentic. That's it.
I didn't know what you were going to say, so I was like, what was it that I said? I was like sitting on the edge of my seat. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to be answering your questions. So if you have questions, please, that's what we're here for, to help you. Tatiana seems to be in a situation where she's moved out of her boyfriend's house and he wants her back, and you want to know how to handle things. You might feel badly about the way you left. Sometimes you just have to cut your losses and go. I get that may not feel good. We've talked a lot. We've done a lot of this topic on love intervention, so I'm not going to go too deep into it. You're welcome to go back through past episodes. But the reality is if you're going to take somebody back after a breakup, your number one question is, what will be different? What will be different? You said that you've told him many times that you weren't happy and he didn't seem to hear you. So, that's a big problem, right? If somebody actually isn't hearing you, that you're unhappy. And so what will be different? If somebody says, oh, I just miss you. Well, that's not a reason to take somebody back, right? What will be different? What will be different? And if you were living together and that person wants you back, clearly you have another place to live. So I wouldn't rush back into being, cohabitating again. Take your time, go slow, maybe start dating them, or maybe just take a break. I mean, honestly, we have our clients not connect with somebody that, whether they initiated the breakup or not, you want to get free and clear of that person for a few months. And you literally make the request, please do not connect with me. I don't want to talk. It could be 21 days. It could be 40 days. It could be whatever number you come up with. But there should be a break of no communication. And that doesn't mean stalking that person on social media. Taking a break means you're going to do your best not to even think about them.
Yeah.
So you can really recalibrate and come back to you. And then after that agreed amount of time where there's zero communication, you could come back together and then ask the question. If they're still interested in getting back together and you are still interested in entertaining that, then you can say, well, if we were to start dating again, what will be different? Because look, sometimes we screw up and we didn't realize we screwed up. And so maybe you screwed up, right? I mean, we don't know this person and we don't know you either. If you want more of our help than that, you can always schedule a free discovery call. We'll put the link somewhere. But in the meantime, if you want the link to schedule a discovery call, just email us. I'm going to put in the support email. You can always just send us a message to support, SUPPORT, at loveonpurpose.com. Checking I spelled everything correctly. I'm hitting return. It's right there in the chat. So if you want to do a complimentary discovery call, just send an email to support at loveonpurpose.com. We're happy to help you further. Maybe there's more that we can assist you with than just this one, particular question. Because usually, relationships are complex and people are complex, and there isn't a one size fits most or fits all when it comes to your heart.
So it looks like we've really touched a nerve with this narcissist thing, because we've got a few more questions. First off,
Sure.
Catalin made a bunch of comments, and we appreciate you sharing your experience. And we want to know, if you have a question, please feel free to put it in there. We'll gladly address it. Then Aaron says, I was in and out of a relationship with a narcissist for 7 years. I finally went cold turkey and blocked him and cut it off. I still often wonder if it was just me and maybe he wasn't that bad. He was a nice guy. I wonder if maybe I didn't communicate my needs clearly. I would guess if you're on and off for 7 years, that you've got plenty of information about whether that relationship was good and healthy and nurturing for you or not.
I don't think that has to do with that relationship. That means there's something going on inside of you where you don't trust yourself to make a decision. That's the bigger issue going on.
That's good.
Yeah. So, knowing how to make a decision for yourself is, sometimes people struggle with that. And sometimes it comes from our soul's journey. So we have a way of looking at somebody's soul's journey, like your life purpose, the arenas that you're gifted in, those blind spot arenas that you come in with, those things that are challenge arenas. And then, of course, there's something called your life school. And so your life school, like some people are in the school of wisdom, and they have a hard time making decisions for themselves. It's their school is the thing they're learning, right? So if you're in the school of wisdom, then there's a lot of ways that we can help you have a new way of knowing how to make decisions for yourself. Because when it's a blind spot, you're stuck in a cyclical pattern of not trusting yourself when you make a decision, or there's a lot of waffling and trying to make one. So,
I would say as well, another indication, that it could be the school of wisdom piece. It could also be that you have an internal double bind, Aaron, which means you have a couple conflicting beliefs inside of you, which keep you, back and forth. One of the most obvious double binds that show up is
in love,
in
Yeah.
relationship, right? Is on the one hand having a desire for love and companionship and being in a relationship. On the other hand, fearing that you'll have to give up your freedom in order to get that. And so those are two conflicting beliefs, internal beliefs inside of you, and keep you stuck and can keep you waffling in relationships. So that may also be a piece of what's going on with you, is that maybe you have two internal conflicting beliefs that have you constantly questioning yourself about whether you're making the right decision or not.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit confused about your question, because you seem to be clear that this person is a narcissist, and yet you're calling that person a nice guy and that he wasn't so bad. So you cannot please a narcissist. So if you're like, oh, maybe it was me, you're a narcissist's dream. So you can't go back to that relationship and somehow make it all better for you.
Yeah.
Because you cannot please a narcissist. They are not pleasable. They will want more. That's like a vampire sucking your blood. Like they will want more and more and more and more. And the more you give up, the more that they thrive. And so it's like they're using you as a generator. So if you're sure that person's a narcissist, you can put those things to bed. And if you're looking to really free yourself from an ex that you still think about and wonder about, we have a process. You can go to our blog at loveonpurpose.com, go into the blog. There's a big search bar in the blog on the left column. You have to scroll down a bit on the left sidebar and search. Matthew already started typing it in there. Search the golden nugget of learning. This is a wonderful process. It's right there in the blog. It literally tells you how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
The golden nugget of learning sets you free, so you're no longer attached to people from your past, so you can be free to have that soul satisfying and long lasting love that you desire and deserve. So we're going to do another question here.
Well, before we do the question, I just want to say this about, the people who've written in about their experiences with narcissists. I want to say there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You're not in some way, defective. And that's why you find yourself in these situations. What you have is that you learn certain strategies in your family of origin that caused you to be more susceptible to these situations. Now, the great thing about thinking about it in that way, to say, well, I learned strategies for how to be in relationship that don't serve me, is because it makes you understand that, oh, I can learn different strategies. I can learn new strategies about how to be in relationship. And we've given a lot of tips about what those strategies are tonight. So maybe think about it in that way. Say, oh, I was given some faulty programming, right? And I'm going to rewrite that programming, rewrite that software.
You're welcome. Aaron says, thank you. I really appreciate that. And you know what? Really, you can just, it's like corrupted software. You can just get new software and start looking for a person that's really in alignment with your true heart's desire, like Matthew said. Let's see. We have a question here from Michelle. Michelle says, what is the key to not getting hurt again? I seem to always pick the guy who's bad for me. He's hot, but he won't commit, or he breaks my heart. How can I do this differently? Well, I like your ending question, but your beginning question is an unrealistic expectation.
Yeah.
So when you say, what is the key to not getting hurt again? Ouch. That's a tough one because love requires risk. So you always at some point have to risk your heart. However, you can mitigate your losses if you go slow and don't give your heart quickly, right? So there's no guarantee. There's no way to walk around and make sure you don't get hurt again. It took me a long, long time to realize the guys that would say, I didn't want to hurt you. Those are the guys that are going to hurt. I knew, like, it took me a while, took me quite a few rounds. I didn't want to hurt you. I knew that was the guy that was going to break my heart. So if you know your pattern, right, Michelle, what's really important for you to recognize is that you are the common denominator in all of your relationships. And what we mean by that is you're the common denominator, meaning you have the power to create the change that you're looking for. Look in the mirror. If you're looking for that person to change your life, it's you. Mm-hmm. So when you ask, how should I handle this, right? That you tend to go with the hot guys who break your heart or they don't commit or whatever. Number one is you want to evaluate their capacity. You want to go to our blog and search how to date for your soulmate. That's another one you want to type in.
I'll type that one in. Sure.
Yeah, we have a really lovely article in our blog called How to Date for Your Soulmate. It literally gives you the steps to weed out the guys that just want sex, a hookup, or someone just convenient, and they're not really looking for a relationship, but they'd love to hang out with you and take you to a ball game or a concert that they were going to anyway, right? Plenty of those experiences myself back when I was single. So there's no way to guard yourself against getting hurt again, but you could mitigate those heartbreaks by taking different steps and dating differently. So How to Date for Your Soulmate, please go look that up. And if you want some more detailed help, because you are uniquely you, email support@loveonpurpose.com. We'll be happy to set up a discovery call with you. It's complimentary.
Before we say anything else, who are you?
Hi, everybody. I'm Orna Walters.
And I'm Matthew Walters, and this is Love Intervention, where we intervene in your love life in a good way to get you off the path of heartbreak and onto the path of long-lasting, soul-satisfying love.
Yes. So Heather says, how do I know if I should stay or should I go? I've been with this guy for 3 years. It's nice. He's a good man and he's good to me, but I've never really felt that spark or excitement with him. It's comfortable, but not that exciting. Can you help me figure this out? That is not a one-size-fits-all question, I don't think. I mean, Matthew might have something that he wants to say about it, but the stay or go, I mean, personally, I'm not the kind of person who can settle without the spark. And everybody's wired differently. But if you're somebody that's like, I really want that spark, but you feel like you have to give up something to get it. I mean, just because somebody is a nice person or a good person, or they have a lot of character, or they just, you know,
they're a good provider,
they
make a good father,
I mean,
any of the other qualities, right? It doesn't mean that they're your person.
Yeah. I mean, my a handful of boyfriends before Matthew, those guys are all really lovely men. They weren't my guy for one reason or another. So there's a lot of ways to, evaluate, should you stay or should you go? But it's more, there isn't like a, some kind of formula that I could give you on it. So again, we get happy to do a discovery call. Mm-hmm. Just email us, support@loveonpurpose.com.
Yeah, I want to say this about that, though. I want to say, if you're waffling 3 years in and you're still unsure, we gave some advice earlier, and I can't remember who it was, but maybe look inside yourself and say, okay, am I stuck? do I have some places inside myself where I'm stuck, and so I'm not allowing myself to move forward in some way? And am I choosing something that's safe in order to not be alone?
Yeah,
I think that's really important. I think sometimes
Yeah.
people are afraid to be alone. But the truth is, oftentimes there's a lot to learn in being alone. I mean, I'll say this, for me, I was always really good at being alone. I like myself. I could go out and do things. I could go to a movie or go out to dinner, and I didn't matter that I was by myself because I like myself and I like spending time with myself. And not everybody is that way, and I get that. But that's sort of one of the things you want to think about fostering within yourself is how can you start to really learn to like yourself instead of, wanting to avoid yourself by having another person there who you put your attention on as opposed to on yourself and what's going on inside of you.
I'm going to add another piece on there because you got me thinking.
Yeah.
You always do. I love working with you. I thought that was great advice. And what I want to say to Heather is it only takes one person to change the dynamic in a relationship. It only takes one. So when you were saying, are you holding back in some way? I was like, oh, maybe you're not in it to win it with him for some other reason, right? So there's a lot, like I said, there isn't really a formula or a cookie cutter. Oh, this is how you figure out if this is your person. There is for you if we knew more about you, but I can't just grab it out of thin air because there isn't one specific formula for everybody, right? So, we can help you make that decision, but I can't help you tonight because there isn't a one size fits most on that decision-making process. But thank you for asking. Thanks for joining us tonight. We have time for one more question. Nikki.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Nikki's, you got it?
Yes.
Okay.
Nikki says, meeting a long-distance romantic love interest in person for the first time, what are going questions? Or I think she means good. What are good questions to ask? We've been speaking remotely for 3 months. Okay, well, I would say your question is interesting to me because you're saying what are good questions to ask? Because
I don't think that's the way you want to think about it.
I don't think you want to think about it.
It's not like, so we'll give an example. We had a client and she was dating this guy and it was a long distance situation. And what he would do was when they were on the phone, he would sort of give her these scenarios. So imagine we're in this situation.
Fictitious,
right.
Elaborate scenarios and situations.
And he'd say, so imagine that this is what's going on, right? How would you handle that? As if by asking her this sort of rhetorical question about this made up situation would reveal some truth about her, right? And it's not going to, because people aren't always honest, right?
So
and maybe they'll tell you what you think they want you to hear. They think you want you to.
You said it. You're saying it funny. That you're answering in a way that's hypothetical, and so you're always putting your best foot forward. That doesn't have anything to do with your actual behavior patterns, because behavior is just something you do. You don't think about it. So when somebody, choosing a life partner isn't based on having conversations, right? So what you talk about isn't what's important at all. But setting up meeting somebody long distance for the first time in person is very important to really have low expectations. Because you've been communicating for 3 months, and if your expectations are way off the charts and you get together and it's like, you never know if there's going to be that spark of chemistry until you meet in person. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on the chemistry spark, or people have put a lot of emphasis on that chemistry spark, and then they're like, oh, that's not that important. And they're told by their friends who've been married a long time that goes away anyway. It doesn't matter. And you try to go without it. But here's the kicker. You cannot go without that chemistry spark. So the first thing you want to do is see if you have a spark with this person when you're sharing the same physical space.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter how you feel about that person. I don't care how many video chats you've had with them or how many conversations you've had. So the first thing you want to do is just see how you feel when you spend time with this person. Get your expectation level to basically just like you're going on a date with a guy who lives down the street, instead of having this off the charts expectation with this person you've been getting to know. So what you do and what you talk about isn't so important as much as having low expectation, making sure that the grown-up person has, is taking care of their own accommodations and what to do and all of that kind of stuff. and that I really hope that you're not traveling, that he's coming to see you, because it sets up the dynamics in a heterosexual relationship. If you look, what it's sometimes I think when we talk about dating, people
Right.
think that we're old fashioned somehow. And I'll tell you why it's important that the lady doesn't travel to go see a guy. When you look at same sex couples, you can always tell which one is more in their masculine and which one is more in their feminine. And yet, for some reason, today's world, all these heterosexual couples want to act like it's all even Steven out there. And it's really not. The dynamic in the dating process is so important. And it doesn't mean that it's always going to be like that if you spend decades with this person and you share your life with them. But it's really important in the beginning that you really let a guy pursue you for a relationship, because then you never have to have the conversation about where is this going?
Exactly. So that's all great. And there's one last thing I want to say about this, and then we're going to wrap things up for tonight, is there's going to be, you have expectations. You both have expectations about how things should go. It's not going to go the way you want it to. Be authentic when that happens. Don't try to brush over it and act like it's all okay. Don't try to make everything nice. Allow yourself to feel your feelings and express your feelings.
Yeah.
Because that's going to tell you a lot about how the two of you handle situations that fall apart, right? And that's going to be so much better information than anything else you're going to learn from this experience.
That's a great answer. That was awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you, everybody, and your really heartfelt questions tonight were super great. We really appreciate you being here because we're doing this for you. And once again, I'm Orna Walters.
And I'm Matthew Walters. And this has been Love Intervention.
Yeah. And we forgot to say all this stuff about if you're on Facebook and if you're on YouTube, and click the bell on YouTube and like us, share, comment on Facebook. And we just really appreciate you being here. We'll be back in 2 weeks on September 13th, same time, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, and have a great night.
Good night.